talking to the witnesses, and they're kind of like telling what they know, what happens next, and there's like other kids, they're not kids anymore, but they were kids at the time. Sort of remembering what happened. Anyway, so I guess at some point an ambulance turned up to help these little girls who had passed out. And one girl was saying, one of the girls was her good friend. She called it Tanya or something like that. And she said Tanya was one of the girls who passed out. And then, I guess one girl passed out. One girl sort of came back. And she said when she came back to the field, back into the school ground, she just lost her fucking mind. And she just, she passed out then. And that's when ambulances are called. The ambulances turned up, took the two little kids away, and apparently they never saw these kids again.
What?
Yeah. She said they never came back to school. We never saw them again. Which is really, sinister as fuck. I don't know what happened to them. They didn't say anything. I bet
they went to the
it.
military base. Or a military base.
Yeah, never saw him again? That's... What the fuck is that about?
That's creepy.
Maybe they just got moved somewhere else, so they couldn't talk about it or something,
No, I mean, somebody would have said, if there wasn't a government project, they would have said, hey, we're leaving. Somebody would have found out where they went. Eventually.
Yeah, it's just really weird. It sounds like, they always wanted to know what happened to these girls, and I don't know if they ever looked into it, but they said they never came back to school again. They never saw these kids again.
That is
do we know their name? Were they traced? Did anyone follow up with?
Not that I know of, but when you hear about the amount of trouble that someone in the government and military, I don't know, went to just scrub this from the history books, you understand why. I guess no documents were ever sort of found on anything about this. Just a bunch of kids who saw this and grew up and being like, what the fuck? Just, what was that about?
Wow.
Anyway, I'll continue on. So one of the witnesses claims a number of kids went into another part of the field after these first kids. I couldn't tell if he was saying this was part of the first craft that they saw. But he says he went into this field of long grass to the edge of it, and he saw two craft in this field. Two of the same looking craft. And he was able to get close enough that he felt this intense heat coming off these crafts. And then when he got pretty close to it, he couldn't get any closer because of the heat coming off it. Both of these UFOs lifted, in synchronicity, lifted into the air, and then both took off in a flash.
How's he? Is he... I mean, if he was interviewed. So
yeah, he was in the documentary, yeah. And so he's interviewed, and he's fine. It's not like he has, 3 heads now because of the radiation or whatever, but he seemed like a genuine Aussie bloke doing his thing. So there was another guy that they found. So I guess that it was, this documentary is pretty fun to watch, actually. The guy who's sort of chasing this story. He goes to this town and I guess delivers a whole bunch of flyers to everyone around the town to say, hey, if you're around during 66, did you happen to see this, hear anything about it? Anyway, he got a few different people who reached out to him. One of the guys was a little older at the time, and he says he and a friend of his the next day tried to go to the field, because they heard about this, obviously, went all around town. They tried to go to the field, and they were turned away by a bunch of military-looking people. Said to get the fuck out of the area, don't come back here. And he seemed to look over, and there was a bunch of other soldiers walking around the field. He thought it was either the Geiger counters, looking for radiation, or metal detectors, which is interesting. He didn't know what was going on there, but he was turned away, and he told to fuck off and get the fuck out of here and don't come back. But he did that. But he said he returned in a week back to the site. All the grass had been cut down, gone. And the areas in which the craft had landed in the grass, and people actually came and saw this area before it got cut down. It was like a crop circle. They said all the grass was flattened and in a swirling pattern.
Oh.
Like what happens when balloons land, obviously.
Yeah.
In a swirling
Very
kind
typical
of
of a
Very
balloon.
typical of balloons. Or kites. Kites do that.
Yeah.
Do that a lot.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, swamp gas does that too. So...
Yeah, swamp gas.
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
It was basically what they were describing as a crop circle in grass.
Wow.
anyway, so when they came back, all the grass was cut down, sheared, gone, and these places where the craft landed was all burnt up. They had burnt the whole area, which is interesting. Like, even if it was radiation, I don't think burning would do much, you know?
No,
Yeah.
they were just trying to get rid of the evidence. They didn't want
Yeah.
people to keep coming there and wondering what was happening.
Right. So then we get into, that's basically the whole story, and then the kids are like confused, they're terrified, what the fuck just happened, and then this huge cover-up goes down, and this thing is like really crazy. So the school principal right after this calls like this all-school assembly, and all the kids and all the teachers from the school come in, and he basically just rails into them and says, stop talking about this. No one's to talk about this anymore. It was nothing. All you saw was a weather balloon. And they were testing radiation in the area, which is like the official story now. I think I read a story recently. They were like, oh, yeah, we found the official documents, and they were just testing radiation in the area, and it was like super secretive. Of course, you'd do that in front of a fucking middle school during recess.
Right. Where two girls end up going missing because of your radiation
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Because that's like really solid like testing. Well done. So someone was interviewed later and he said the principal gave the school a lecture and told the children they would be severely punished if they talked about this matter, and told the staff they could lose their jobs if they mentioned it at all. So they really like said, don't fucking talk about this. And then one of the kids says this military, Air Force, police, he didn't know what it was, uniformed man turns up at the school right after this. And they said these military guys turned up within like 20 minutes. And the crazy thing was there wasn't any bases that close to this area. No military, Air Force, whatever it was, nothing was within 20 minutes. So either these guys were sitting in trucks like tracking this thing, or I don't know what was going on. But they were there pretty quickly after this all happened to try and shut the shit down. So this guy turns up at the school with the principal and starts going around like trying to like shut this down. So he goes to that teacher who was taking photos and physically takes the camera off her, and she's like protesting, saying no. And he's like taking it away, saying like, national security, we're taking this, you can't have it anymore, that's it, you're done.
Because of radiation testing with the weather balloon.
Right. So he takes away a camera, so we don't have any photos of this shit.
But you don't need it if 200 people are like claiming it existed.
I know, yeah. And so like, it is just people's stories about what happened when they were kids, but still. And there was a few like discrepancies and differences in what the kids saw. Like some kids were seeing purple colors coming from the ship, some kids were seeing green, but still basically the same story going down. So some of the teachers reported that the Australian Intelligence Services, and it's called ASIO, A-S-I-O, reportedly visited the teachers and threatened to spread rumors about them about being alcoholics and other threats if they kept talking about it. And then
this is the 60s, so a man spreading rumors about a woman who is a teacher, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, so
military.
All that shit's going down. This is, sort of Vietnam War era too, so that's why they're saying US was actually in Australia at the time, and because we're allies. So police cars turned up and began to shut down the situation straight after this happened. So reporters, a lot of people in the town obviously saw all this shit go down. Like it's a small town, and this thing like happening in the sky, there's airplanes, all sorts of shit going down. So the TV news reporters turned up pretty quickly too, and the police were like instantly upon them, like shutting them down. They started trying to interview the kids, and they like kicked out all the reporters. There's no like First Amendment, like freedom of speech. They were just like, out of there, get the fuck out of here, stop talking to the kids. The kids were all warned, don't talk to the media, no, don't say anything. And one of the girls interviewed in the documentary says, fuck it, I'll go talk to him, I was a troublemaker at the time.
Nice.
So she was on the news, and she said she got detention or something for being on the news talking about it, and then she was like quoted in an article later on after that, and she got another detention because of that. It was
she's like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, she's like, fuck it, I'll take some detention. I'm on the news, motherfuckers. So this documentary maker after this he hears, so there was news stories. Great, so I can track those down. So he goes to the local news stations and goes into their archives. They have archives going back decades, so easily this covers 66. So he goes to them, tries to track down the story, and okay, yeah, we have all that footage. It's in cans, the old can footage, and they have this huge archive. So he goes back to try and find it. He finds the can of that date of that news story, and it's empty. There's nothing in it.
Wow.
Like it'd been purged. Like someone had come in and like stolen all that shit. So all these poor students like left feeling confused and betrayed, like they'd seen this shit, and the teachers and authorities and everyone else is telling him what you saw, you didn't actually see. That was just your lion eyes, and it was just a balloon, and you don't know what you're talking about. And these kids are like, "Fuck you! Like we know what we saw. You can't, come and tell us this is like crazy."
Yeah.
And so the military was on the scene. There's they're testing with Geiger counters. What are they looking for? Like, is there like debris? It wasn't like there was a crash or anything.
Must be just part of their protocol. It must be crash retrieval protocol. You always just use a Geiger counter to make sure things are legit.
So yeah, anyway, basically he just goes into trying to find any record of this. Like he goes to the local UFO, Australian UFO group in Victoria, and they sort of relay this story if they've been trying to dig into this for years. And, for some reason, this particular story, he said there was like military, there was reports going on. They find the odd one or two little stories in local papers and stuff about it. But no, every fucking mention of this in official documents, in everything, has been completely scrubbed. Like, for whatever reason...
Wow.
Nothing about this appears in any documentation going through all the I guess, I don't know, there's something like the Freedom of Information Act in Australia, but they were looking through all the different files trying to find anything about this. This is one of the big ones, obviously. Everything's been scrubbed. Yeah.
I wonder if it's because they took those two girls.
I don't know. I mean, that's a huge deal. They kind of brush over that in the documentary. I was like, That's
huge.
Big. Let's try and find those kids. Like, what happened to those girls? That's a huge thing for me. But they kind of like, we just never saw them again. I was like, all right,
what?
Let's find them then. What happened to them?
Is that common in Australia? Just giant spiders take kids once in a while, and that's just
I mean, yes, the odd kangaroo runs off with a kid every now and then, but you expect that. That's why people have multiple kids. You can make another one.
Oh my god.
Harsh, but fair. So they're so basically every step of the way they just encounter this really crazy, eerie wall of silence by everyone involved. Like everyone was like super scared to talk about it. They've been threatened. Everything's gone, and then it got basically what we were saying before. Like if this was a secret government test, why would you do it in front of so many people and then try so hard to just completely scrub this from the records? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of this story. Like, what was happening? Where did this thing come from? What was it all about? What were they trying to do anything? But it seemed like it was kind of showing off in front of a bunch of kids for some reason. And I don't know, people went to a lot of trouble to try and shut it down. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know. A mystery. An Aussie mystery.
Australia mystery. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel that even in America, though, even some of the stories that people have questions about, they can still dig stuff up. So this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. This is like crazy. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. But, I mean, even though your story got a little dark there, I still...
It tends to happen.
I still don't think that their presence was supposed to be negative. I think that the cover-up part of it is negative. So all of that that happened post was negative, but I feel like the interaction was supposed to be positive. It was supposed to get these kids to think outside the box. And all the fear came from basically the cover-up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, maybe. Yep.
And even though we made fun of your angel hair story... Also very interesting. Same thing.
And also, I just want to point out, like, in these stories in this book, most of the encounters with the humanoids were all gray aliens. I just thought that was interesting. It wasn't anything different. That kind of disappointed me on some level, but it could be